Sanbanan Dumlang, hello, it's Simply Sfiso here, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast, Simply Do the Work. Now, I know it's been like a hot minute, it's been like 4 months since the last episode, and the reason being, I've just been super busy with school. Like this year, I started my 4th year in med school, and it's been so hectic, and I haven't really had the chance to do this because obviously to get these episodes up, it's not just getting up in front of the mic and just speaking random mess, right? I do research beforehand, and there's the editing, and I'd rather do it if I'm gonna do it well. Like there are many other episodes I've actually recorded, but when I listened to them when I was editing, I was like, nah, this ain't it, so I scrapped them. But hopefully this one makes the cut. That being said, feel free to subscribe, follow, share, rate the podcast. If you're new, there are previous episodes you can catch up on. And here, my objective is to really just do the work of just thinking through things and just sharing my perspective, and not necessarily being right. Like I'm pretty sure, if you pull up a podcast from last year, there's a chance that I might no longer agree with some of the things I said, and that's okay. That is growth, that is evolution. But today's topic is something which I've wanted to talk about for a while, and I feel like both on my YouTube channel and on the podcast, I've really danced around these issues and never really confronted them head on. And it's like even when I did want to talk about it, I was like, where do I even start? Like, where do I even start? Because there's so much to unpack, and probably won't get through it all today, but hopefully you can tell by the title that today we're going to be talking about the relationship between Christianity and queerness. So I'm going to start by taking you guys through. So if you follow me on Instagram, and you know that I did a Queering the Bible challenge. This was hosted by queertheology.com. This is not sponsored, by the way, but I do recommend you check out queertheology.com if you are looking for LGBTQ affirming Christian content, or like if you are queer yourself, or also if you are a straight cisgendered ally. I do recommend you check them out. But basically they had this Instagram challenge where for 7 days they'd give us different prompts, and you basically did a reflection based on that. So I'm going to read a few of the prompts, but if you want to see the pictures and see what I posted for all 7 days, check out my Instagram at Simply Sfiso. So we'll start with day 1. So I wrote here, today's prompt is Jesus, and I immediately thought of the first Pride event that I attended in October 2018. In this space, I felt unconditional love from the people I was with, and I felt comfortable expressing a part of me that I repressed for so long. I believe if Jesus was here on earth in human form, he'd be at the Pride events, showing compassion to queer people and protecting them from those who want to throw stones at us. So basically, I feel like with this reflection, right, the point, what is going through my mind, especially like with the last part, we'll talk about protect us from those who want to throw stones. I was thinking of the story of the woman in the New Testament Bible who was caught in the act of adultery, right? And then according to the law of that time, she had to be basically stoned to death. And Jesus, coming into the situation, his response was, let the one who has no sin cast the first stone. And everyone walked away. And I think for me that really just speaks to how Jesus loves people, right? How he came for the marginalized, right? And I think basically the people who by society standards are seen as unworthy of love, the people who are outcast, who are forgotten, who are ridiculed and mocked, that is who I believe Jesus stands for. The oppressed, the marginalized, not the oppressor and not the privileged. And so, yeah, just gonna move on to the next one. This was from day 2, and the picture is from my Bible. It basically, let me read the prompt. So it says, today's prompt brought up a ton of mixed feelings. I was told that the gospel is the good news, but the message I was taught growing up instilled a lot of shame and fear in me. This picture is from the cover of a Bible that I've owned for nearly a decade now. And what the picture says, it says, there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friend. John 15, verse 13. Even though I don't read as much as I did back then, this verse will always resonate deeply within me and defines one of the core values of the gospel. I'm also reflecting on how the gospel has shifted for me through my journey of deconstruction. It's no longer about trying to get everyone to share the same beliefs as me, but showing people unconditional love and compassion. And so, the prompt, as I mentioned, was the gospel, right? And I think for some people that word can be quite triggering, because when you think of the gospel, you think of maybe being threatened with hell if you don't convert to Christianity, right? Or being like I mentioned, right, fear and shame. Like, I think there's a lot of manipulation that sometimes goes into the gospel. I'm using that in quotes, which I think drifts so far away from what Jesus stands for, what Jesus was trying to do, right? Which is, I think I touched on in, the previous post, which is about love and compassion, right? I think as I read these posts, you said there are quite some recurring themes, so we're going to move on over to day 6. Today's prompt is faithful, and it first got me thinking about what does that word actually mean. So I pulled up some meanings, and the meaning of faithful is basically remaining loyal and steadfast. Some synonyms are loyal, constant, true, devoted, unswerving, unwavering, dedicated, committed, trusted, dependable, reliable, obedient. And so this picture is from a youth bash that I volunteered to help organize, and this is one of the many events that I was part of during my time in evangelical churches. I was so loyal to the church that it hurt me deeply when I realized that they wouldn't affirm my queer identity, and thus my faith in God started wavering. Since leaving the church, I'm constantly asking myself, how devoted am I to Christianity? There's definitely some toxic theology that I don't believe at all, but I also recognize that there's so much good that this faith brings to my life and many other people. My faithfulness is no longer tied to salvation, in quotation marks, and evangelism, also in quotations, as I was taught growing up, but instead I'm now committed to following Jesus' example of reaching out to the marginalized and living a life that makes a difference beyond me. I think I'll just read the last day's reflection, and then just share my final thoughts on this challenge and what it brought up to me, what it meant for me. So, day 7, the last day, and today's word is salvation. I'm honestly still figuring out what this word means and how it can be a reality in my life. However, I'm pretty sure that salvation isn't saying a prayer and getting a get out of hell free card. It's not about converting everyone in my life or fearing other people who are different from me. I've always felt somewhat connected to divinity, and I believe that I'm on the right path to figuring out the road of salvation. I also believe that salvation is tied into how we treat people and showing them love with no ulterior motive or agenda. And so those are just 4 out of the 7 days, and I think they are certainly recurring themes, right? I think you can definitely tell that there's certainly phrases or ideas that I repeat. I think the main themes that really came up for me during this reflection is love, right? I want to really love people. I also think that we're all called to love, Christian or not. I think we should be very loving towards one another, reaching out to the marginalized, right? I myself, I am a marginalized individual by the system of white supremacy, cis heteronormativity, and so I also, in that same space, right, I think also you have to, when you have these conversations, right, you recognize that in some situations we are the oppressed, but in others we are the oppressors. And so I need to be very aware of the fact that, for example, within Christianity, right, I recognize that as someone who practices Christianity, this is a community that has both inflicted harm on me, but that I also inflict harm on others, or I can inflict harm on others through Christianity. And also in the past, I was essentially a part of the problem. And also I think just also really questioning what exactly is Christianity. Like I think you can also tell that from these posts that I still have a lot that I do not know. There's a lot that I'm still figuring out, and that's okay. That's part of doing the work. Doing the work is also being honest and coming forward and saying, hey, I don't actually know what this word means. I don't know what any of this means, but I'm doing my best to figure it out. And so just want to segue that onto the next segment, which is Lil Nas X. Now, Lil Nas X, I do want to just name and say that I am aware that he has some problematic things that he's being called out from. That is not the conversation that we're having today. I can't have that conversation in an unbiased way. That is the truth. I can't objectively have that conversation, but I do think it is a very important conversation to have. Important conversation to be held. That he should be held accountable, and we'll see how all of that plays out. But I want to just read this tweet, which I posted on my Instagram by Lil Nas, saying, I spent my entire teenage years hating myself because of the shit y'all preached would happen to me because I was gay. So I hope you are mad. Stay mad. Feel the same anger you teach us to have towards ourselves. And I think this is so powerful because if you watched his music video, right, for Call Me By Your Name, I think if you are a critical thinker, you can clearly see that he's clearly making a criticism towards Christianity, right? Or at least how Christianity is being preached and practiced. And I think also you can tell that he's sort of reclaimed the narrative that is often thrown at queer people, right? You're often told that you are going to hell, you are an abomination, all these other things, right? And so I do also want to say that I feel like some of the outrage is rather pretentious, because it's like you have people who don't really practice Christianity, or people who are like I feel like there are people this person is not really about that life, but now they're mad. It's like many people I feel like are using Christianity to justify their own bigotry, right? Their own personal prejudices and biases, and I just love how Lil Nas, as a black queer person who has a huge platform, is doing this sort of thing, because I don't think we've seen this kind of representation. At least I haven't, in my lifetime. Obviously, I do know that there are many other black queer performers and personalities who have large platforms, but I just think what Lil Nas was able to do with this, right? Because another thing, you can tell this music video wasn't just a spur of the moment thing. You can tell it was very thought out, and he was very intentional with the message that he wanted to tell with the music. I feel like the song on its own, right? Yeah, it does have the lyrics, and the music video, right? He knew people were gonna be mad, and he was ready for it. And I just wanted to just make that quick little shout out. I do also, just before I move on to the final segment for today, do want to say that, while we often talk about how we need representation is important, I think what we forget is we need representation with power, because Lil Nas is clearly in control. He is driving this narrative. He's not just a token black person who's being controlled by some white corporation. Obviously, right, we have to recognize that he is making money from this, right? There is capitalism involved, and I do think that we should also not put him too much on a pedestal, because at the end of the day, if you're being honest, right, this video is gonna make money. Yes, it is starting very important conversation, but it doesn't personally like my everyday day-to-day life is not going to be changed because Lil Nas was twerking on the devil or something. You get what I'm saying. But I think that can bring us on to the final segment, and I want to talk about China Anne McClain. So if you don't know who China Anne McClain is, but I think you should. My generation, we know her from Disney Channel, on Ant Farm, Descendants, but she's also acted in many other projects. I think also Black Lightning, one of her more recent projects that she's been a part of, and I've seen on social media a couple of TikToks that she's made. defending the Christian faith. I think probably because of Lil Nas, right? And there's been so much conversation, some people criticizing Christianity. China made some videos, I think 2 TikToks really, speaking about her faith, which has been quite polarizing to say the least, because you have people who are praising her and they're so happy to see a celebrity speaking about their faith, and then you have other people who are dragging and demonizing her. And I sort of have a nuanced view or take on the China situation, which I don't know, by the time this podcast episode is out, might be old news. Depends how quickly I can get it out. But anyways, I think first and foremost, you only just leave her alone. If you don't agree with her, leave her alone. Like, people are accusing her of forcing Christianity down their throats. As like, she posted this on her TikTok. Like, you can literally, like, if you watch the video and you're like, you literally just leave the video, right? Like, even I think, like, I do recognize that some of the language that she uses, right, for me is like, ooh, girl, I don't fully like agree with it, but I can tell that at the gist of what she was saying, she was basically trying to say what I've been saying this entire episode, right? That Christianity is about love and compassion, and she talked about how we shouldn't judge, right? Like, as people, we shouldn't be the one to judge. And I saw another TikTok where someone was like responding to her, and they were saying that China should keep her mouth shut. Now is not the time to be saying this. She is invalidating people's experiences and trying to justify what the church has done. It's like, that is not what she said. Literally, China literally said that she described her faith as being relational, right? She described it as being not necessarily about being religious, right? And I can understand why people can still be upset with her, because I know from my time in evangelical churches that even the most like religious institutions use that kind of language. And so I think it's really a thing of people now just like nitpicking and picking apart what she said. And it's just like, just leave her alone. Leave her alone. I think we can have conversations about how, like I mentioned, like on one end, yes, Christianity and the church institution has caused harm to many people. But at the same time, it has empowered people, right? It has really given people a new lease of life. It has made life better for others. I think both of those things can be true, because the history of the church is messy as hell, right? I think even China, being a black woman, she probably also recognizes how Christianity was an integral part of colonization of the African continent and the enslavement of black African people. Like, Christianity has placed itself, like, a lot of Christians today, I feel like, have a superiority complex, kind of like how the Chief Justice of South Africa, like, I feel like he like, whenever I see his name like tied in with Christianity and him being called up for something, it's always some mess. I don't even know how to unpack that, so I won't. But I felt like I had to name it because it's low-key been bothering me. And so I think that is how China feels, right? You have people like him, you feel like you are misrepresenting my faith, you're misrepresenting what I believe in, because that's how I sometimes feel it, right? I feel like, for example, as soon as people hear that you are a Christian, they immediately think, oh, you're a bigot, you're one of them weirdos, one of those weird people, which I think some Christians like to perceive that as, a form of oppression and persecution. It's like, I won't necessarily take it that far, but I do think that there is an unfair prejudice against Christianity, and not just Christian, but I think all religions. Like, you get people who, it's kind of like their daily bread and butter is to bash religions, and it's like, well, aren't you forcing your anti-religious beliefs on us in the same way you don't want religions to force their beliefs onto you? It's messy, right? I feel like when it gets to, especially with religion, it is kind of messy. And I actually, episode 12, I do kind of talk about this in the episode's called Playing the Jesus Card to Justify Bigotry. But I think it's a very relevant conversation, and one that I hope to continue to have on my platform, whether it be here on the podcast or on my YouTube channel. But yeah, those are just some of the thoughts that I have on just current events that have been happening in my life and just in pop culture and the internet. Like, bottom line, love and accept everyone. Like, my motto is, like, I have this new motto that I got from this guy, Mr. Atheist, on YouTube. Okay, it doesn't go with Mr. Atheist anymore, Jimmy Snow on YouTube, where he says, I don't have to respect your beliefs, but I respect all people. And I feel like what is happening, like, Lil Nas X is being disrespected by people. China is being disrespected by people. I have been disrespected. And it's kind of like, if you can just respect me as a person, as a human, because like, at the end of the day, that is the issue. And people are marginalized, is they're usually stripped of their humanity. Black people are stripped of their humanity. Trans people are stripped of their humanity. And it's kind of like, can we just live? That's what we want. We just want to live, okay? In the same way you have the right to practice your Christianity, others have the right to say, I don't believe that. And let me just stop myself right there, because I could go on and on and on, and I feel like at this point I'm just rambling. But thank you so much for listening, and do check out my YouTube channel. Like, I have a vlog coming up that I'm going to be editing. It's sort of like a look into just how life has been for me. So like, do stay tuned for that vlog. If it's not up yet, check it out on YouTube, Simply Sfiso. I'm on social media at Simply Sfiso, though Instagram is where I'm most active. Like, my Twitter account is just, yeah, it's just yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, and until I see you or you hear from me in the next one, I love you so much.